All right, let's get right into it. India's latest economic survey paints a really fascinating picture. It's basically a story of incredible strength at home that's clashing head on with a world that's becoming more and more chaotic. We're going to unpack this paradox. And this quote, right from the survey itself, just lays it all out, doesn't it? This is the central puzzle we're going to explore. You've got India's economy firing on all cylinders, but it's up against a global system where the old rules just don't seem to apply anymore. Getting a grip on this contradiction is really the key to understanding India's entire macroeconomic backdrop right now. So let's kick things off with Act 1, taking a look under the hood at the sheer power of India's domestic economic engine. And honestly, the numbers we're about to see are pretty remarkable. Let's just start with the big one. The first estimates for the 2025-26 fiscal year are pegging India's real GDP growth at an incredible 7.4%. I mean, think about that. That makes it the fastest growing major economy in the world for the fourth year in a row. It's a real bright spot in what's otherwise a pretty gloomy global picture. And this growth isn't just coming from some kind of reckless spending spree. Not at all. As you can see here, the government has been really aggressive about getting its finances in order. They've managed to slash the fiscal deficit from a high of 9.2% of GDP right after the pandemic down to a target of just 4.4%. Fulfilling that promise to cut the deficit by more than half, that sends a really powerful signal about fiscal discipline. The good news just keeps rolling in. I mean, the macroeconomic fundamentals are looking solid pretty much everywhere you look. Inflation, it's been brought down and anchored. Credit rating agencies, they've definitely noticed, and they're giving upgrades. You've got strong public investment, and maybe most importantly, both the banks and corporate India have really healthy balance sheets. And the engine driving all of this? Good old-fashioned, strong domestic demand. Okay, but here's where the story takes a turn. This amazing domestic picture doesn't exist in a bubble. India isn't an island. Its economic fate is tangled up with a global system that is looking, well, increasingly fragile and unpredictable. So that brings us to Act 2, where we see this conflict really start to build. Now we're looking at these powerful global headwinds that India is sailing right into, even with its own engine running so strong. Now, before we go any further, we gotta quickly understand this term. Capital flows. All it really means is money moving across borders for things like investment or trade. And because India generally imports more than it exports, it really depends on these foreign capital inflows to, balance the books. When that money starts to dry up, it can cause some real problems. So here it is. This is the absolute crux of the issue. In the good old days, an economy with fundamentals as strong as India's would be a total magnet for those capital flows we just talked about. That would lead to a strong, stable currency. But what the survey is arguing is that this link, it's broken. The global system just doesn't reward strong performance the way it used to. And this quote just nails it. The rupee is punching below its weight. Despite India's fantastic performance, its currency has been underperforming. And it's not because of any weakness at home, but because global investors are just getting really nervous in this new, uncertain world. And these headwinds, they're very real and very serious. The survey points to things like new U.S. tariffs, way more intense geopolitical competition, and a world where trade policy is now being driven by security concerns, not just pure economics. Then you throw in new financial risks like from all the leveraged AI investments, and what do you get? A global uncertainty index that's almost as high as it was during the peak of the pandemic in 2020. That's a scary thought. So how in the world does India respond when it's faced with this paradox? Well, that brings us to Act 3 of our story, a strategy that the survey has a great name for: marathon at a sprint. This right here is the government's guiding idea. What does it mean? Well, it means India needs the endurance for long-term reform, that's the marathon part, but it also needs the speed and agility to react to these sudden global shocks. That's the sprint. So you're basically running for the long haul, but you're doing it at top speed. And this thinking translates into a really clear three-part policy that the survey calls strategic sobriety. Step 1, double down on what you can control, your own domestic growth. Step 2, build up your defenses. Focus on observing shocks by building buffers, like foreign exchange reserves. And Step 3, treat things like fiscal discipline not just as good housekeeping, but as a strategic asset that builds trust and credibility on the world stage. Okay, so what's next? What does the future actually hold? Well, the survey doesn't just diagnose the problem, it actually tries to game out what could happen next, laying out 3 possible scenarios for the global economy. Now, what's so wild about this is the probabilities. Look at this. The two most likely outcomes, both with a 40 to 45% chance, are either managed disorder, which is basically more of the same volatility, or disorderly breakdown, where things get a whole lot worse. But you know what's missing? There is no stable business as usual scenario. It's not even on the table. And that right there tells you everything you need to know about the current global outlook. And yet, and this is the amazing part, despite this really daunting global picture, the survey concludes that all the recent reforms have actually lifted India's own medium-term growth potential to a sustainable 7%. That's what's at stake here, figuring out how to maintain this incredible growth in a world that's becoming more and more hostile. Which really leaves us with this final massive question that gets to the very heart of the 2025 paradox. In a world where the rules have totally changed and the risks are just piling up, is having your own house in perfect order actually enough anymore? Can domestic strength, all by itself, truly define a nation's destiny? The answer to that is going to be the story of India's economy for years to come.